Welcome to Sewing Out Loud, the official podcast of Zede Sewing Studio. Here are your hosts, Zede and Mallory.
Sewing Out Loud. Hello and welcome to the podcast. I'm Mallory Donahue. I don't know who I am. We're the same person. So
Sometimes it works out like
I'm
that.
Mallory Donahue.
And I'm Zede Donahue, and hopefully we can keep our identities straight on this particular podcast.
You know, we did get a question when we were at an event one time. They were like, so which one of you is the talent?
Or which one of you is the daughter?
No,
that hasn't happened.
No one really asked us that question.
But it would be nice if you did.
Yeah. So, they're like, oh, so which one of you is the talent and which one of you manages things? And we're like, well, even though I am kind of the manager, I think objectively I'm kind of the talent too, right?
I think we're both the talent.
Okay, anyway.
Well, it's not like somebody just sits behind the scenes or something and does paperwork,
No, that I would like to find that person.
Yeah. If you know of anyone.
If you know someone who would do that, that'd be great.
That would work out really well.
Okay, today we're going to talk about the construction and finishing of knit garments. We're going to try not to get off on too many tangents here, but
we say this at every
we do.
Every other podcast, but okay.
There's about 14,000 people, though, in the Self Sewn Wardrobe group at the moment, and I see a lot of people finishing knit garments wrong. And, when I say wrong...
Unsuccessfully.
Yeah, right.
Or sometimes I see them and they'll pass, but it could be a lot prettier.
Sure.
Right.
Or, when you say unsuccessfully, sometimes it's not in a way that will have a lot of, structural integrity,
Exactly.
Things like that. So there's more than one way to finish a knit garment, but maybe we can give people some concepts and tools and information about knits that would help them to make an appropriate choice, considering their equipment.
Right.
So knit fabrics are stretchy, right?
Yes.
Okay. And this came up in the group too. Not all knits have a lycra or spandex content in them.
Correct.
Yes.
Which means they have less recovery usually too.
Right.
So often they're stretchier, but they also have better recovery than just, say, a knit that is... And when you say knit, you're talking about the weave.
Right.
Knit is not a type of fabric.
Yeah, so someone was asking about, I wore a silk jersey cardigan, right? And they were like, oh, so, how stretchy is it? And I'm like, it's kind of stretchy. And someone mentioned, that fabric has a mechanical stretch.
Right. And the word jersey describes whatever that stitch is.
So a mechanical
or that
stretch.
Weave, right.
Yeah, mechanical stretch really means, this stuff is knitted versus woven. So it is a less stable structure, which means it'll stretch a little bit, right? So there's woven silk fabric. Well, this silk fabric that my cardigan was made out of was knitted, right?
Right.
And it had no spandex in it. It was 100% silk, okay?
Right.
So that's generally a jersey. So if you're using the word jersey just to describe any knit, I believe that is incorrect. And I know that some websites might also
there's also the double knit.
Yeah.
Which in the olden days, that was like the spongy stuff. It's not so spongy, I don't think, anymore.
I think it can depend.
Well, I don't know what they've done, but they've upgraded it. It's probably just the fibers, honestly.
Okay, but what I was saying before you brought up double knit is that some websites, I think, are calling everything stretchy a jersey, too.
Yes.
Which I find to be incorrect. So...
Well, and I will say, I don't know if this has gotten straightened out or not, but at one time the knit needles were called jersey needles.
That's right.
And I don't believe they do that.
Well,
not everyone does it anyway.
Remember, we should talk about this too. We'll talk about needles just a tad, even though we have done that before. So, you've got your fabrics that are knitted that maybe aren't quite as crazy stretchy as the fabrics that have spandex.
But they're not stable like a woven.
Yeah, they're not as stretchy as fabrics that might have spandex worked into them. which is inherently stretchy. The fiber itself,
it's
all on its own before it's
rubber
made,
stuff.
Yeah,
yes.
Before it's made into fabric, it is stretchy.
Right.
And so
it's a rubbery long fiber.
Yes. So that is going to, have more stretch. All these fabrics, though, you can't just know, oh, it has this much percentage of spandex, it's going to be this stretchy.
No. If somebody says, oh, you just need 2% spandex or 2% lycra is the
brand name.
And what's the other one that Europe uses?
Elastane.
Yes. So those are all basically spandex.
Right.
Because it says it's 2% lycra means nothing as far as stretch and recovery.
Yeah,
it's just giving you fiber content. That's all it's doing.
If a website says this has this much percentage of spandex or lycra and it has a 20% stretch or a 30% stretch or a 70% stretch, you should be able to trust that.
Right.
And that's generally what a pattern will ask you for. Right. They said, please use a fabric with this much stretch.
Right. Well, so to repeat or say that in a way that I hope everybody can understand. So if you have a description of a fabric and it says it's 2% lycra and it has a 50% stretch, that's what it has. It has a 50% stretch.
There you go.
And then you see another description of another fabric and it says it's 2% lycra and it is a, 4-way or all-way stretch or whatever, but does not say a percentage. You cannot assume it has the 50% stretch like the one that it was stated in.
Yeah, you have to.
You either have to do it yourself or
get a swatch.
Or call those
people.
A lot of times if it's an online company, you can email them and they'll let you know.
So I want to get into the specifics now of areas of a garment. Okay. Let's first. I want to talk about necklines. This is where I see a lot of I hate to use the word failure, but a lot of confusion, and I just picture like the cloud above the Charlie Brown characters' heads. People are upset, about necklines.
Right.
On a knit, when you cut that neckline, it's generally like rounded somewhat somewhere, right?
Well, it could be a V-neck.
It could be a V-neck, but it's got some bias incorporated, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just cut on a straight
grain.
And I know this might be confusing to some people because they may have heard in their lives, well, knits don't fray. You don't have to finish knits or something like that. And that can work on some knits on like a straight hem occasionally. That's not going to work on a neckline. And what do I mean by not work? It's not going to keep its shape.
Basically, it's not going to keep its shape. It's not probably going to recover properly. It might not fray. It might just roll.
Or just so you all, I saw somebody in the group say that.
It can become unknitted.
Yeah, I saw somebody in the group say that a knit will never ever fray, and I'm like, no, just because you knit something doesn't make it like.
You can actually grab.
It will come unknitted. You can
actually grab a thread and like undo the whole thing if you get the right
thread.
Yeah.
I mean, they were like, well,
Now this is coming from Mallory, the infamous no hemmer of my knit shirts.
This is coming from me. Now we'll get to hems, which are a little different than necklines. So on your necklines, you're going to have to do some type of finishing, right?
Yes.
And like Mom said, you guys don't know this, but I had to sneeze really bad, and she real quick made sure that I was going to mention this. On a knit neckline, sometimes you want the neckline to stretch if it's very close to your neck and it has to stretch over your head.
So basically the neck hole is smaller than your head.
Yep. And then sometimes on a knit, the neckline is so large that there's no need to stretch it to put it on.
What I would call a ballerina neck, which we know that sort of came from a leotard because it had to come up over your hips.
Yep. That's right. Or I'm like looking at you right now, and you just have like a kind of a scoop, a wide, deep scoop.
I have like a big, huge jewel neck scoopy thing. It's my own shape. I don't know what it is.
And your head's going to go through it without stretching.
Right.
Okay. So it is possible if you want, if the neckline is large enough on your knit garment, you could finish it with a woven. You could finish it with bias.
Which I do all the time.
Yes.
Right.
Zede is she does this a lot. She loves it. It's really cute. She uses stripes on the bias, so, makes cute. A cute shape, etc. But if you need to finish that neckline and you want it to stretch, you can't treat the knit garment like a woven garment.
Yes, you can't stitch it with a woven stitch, so to speak,
Yeah,
which would be a straight lock stitch.
That's right. You're going to have to use a zigzag of some kind. You can use a fabric band. You can turn it under. You can do all sorts of things with that. But if you want it to stretch, let's pretend like you want the band to stretch. Let's leave out that woven, finishing.
And you want it to recover, too.
And recover, yes. Stretch and recover as you wear it, as you move in it. If your kid pulls down on your neckline.
Now, on some children's clothing, because kids have such big heads in comparison to their bodies, you may want to put a snap or something at the shoulder. Yeah. Right. You may, just because you don't want the size, you have to actually make the neck hole to get it over their big head. You don't want that, big and floppy around their neck because it's just not, you can't get it small enough.
So one option is a fabric band. Okay, fabric band for the neckline. And your pattern should include instructions for this fabric band. If you're self-drafting and you're playing around or you're doing whatever, you need to make the band shorter than the neckline generally, okay? What this means is you'll stretch the band as you sew it to the neckline, and it should ideally sort of lay flat then.
Right. That way it cups in towards the body.
That's
basically.
Right. So it lays flat, so it's not like you get some gathering look or anything, unless you want that. And what that has done is it's brought that knit in and up.
Right.
And so it needed to be a little smaller. And you would start off at 80%?
Well,
I know it's not a hard
You want to know what I really
rule.
Do?
What do you really do?
Let me tell you, everybody, what I really do.
Yeah.
Because it usually turns out to be it's 15 or 20% smaller than the neckline.
Okay.
What I really do is I decide what size band I want with the width.
Yes.
Okay. And I lay my garment down and I lay down the neckline.
Mm-hmm.
And then I take that piece of fabric that I have cut larger than I need, longer than I need. I fold it over just like I would fold it over. And then I start placing it on my neckline.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's what you have. You're going to wind up with the side you sew on is going to actually wind up being a bigger circle than the side that's folded.
Yes.
Yes, because it's stretched onto the garment. So what I do is I get the inside size of what my neck hole's going to be.
Right.
Okay, by laying it down.
Uh-huh.
Okay, which makes it shorter.
That's right.
So that's how I do it. Okay? And I just cut it. Okay, and then when I go over and sew it, I'm taking a little more out.
Yeah.
And I have really never had that fail. So I don't measure. I lay the I'm laying the fabric on the garment, and I'm looking at the inside circumference of that band.
Line up when you have a neckband. It gets folded in half lengthwise generally, so you have like a fold. So you sort of lay your fold along the raw edge of your neckline. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's raw edge to raw edge.
Okay,
but. So say it winds up being a half inch,
but it's
wide.
Smaller. Yeah, you've made it smaller.
It winds up being a half inch wide, right? So I lay it almost like it's where it's going to be sewn. But I make sure that inside is going to lay fat. That inside circle, that folded circle.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is you will have a gap.
Right.
Okay, on the outside circle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then I cut it that much less.
Right.
If that makes sense. We might have to do
a video of that.
That might have to be a drawing or a video. But I do not use a measuring tape.
Okay, well, I'll say sometimes I use measuring tape, and I will do about 85, 80.
Yeah.
Depending.
Usually it's 15 to 20% you're whacking off. Yeah.
So it has to be smaller, and people are like, well, I've been getting a lot of people being like, oh, don't, tell me what to do. And... Don't tell me to use a 3-thread, narrow or whatever.
That's right.
And, so we're trying to really justify ourselves here. If you don't make the neckband smaller, it's going to stand up.
Right.
Okay, so you want it to lay flat.
It's going to look like you made it.
Right.
And you didn't know what you were doing.
Probably not going to look quite right. So that's one option. Another option is to fold over your raw edge, like wrong sides to wrong sides, and do a cover stitch on a cover stitch machine. If you want to do that, like fold over and use a sewing machine, I'd really recommend using some type of elastic in there, like a clear elastic first. Do you, or would you ever just turn over a knit neckline and double needle it?
Let me look. Oh, I've got
No,
to search.
That's a cover stitch, yeah.
Probably not.
I have found that the double needle, while it's appropriate for knits, it doesn't give the same type of stretch.
Yeah, I don't. I think I would put something in there. Yes. So I haven't done it in such a long time. I'm so sorry.
I know. Well, that's what we do. We do a lot of our knit finishing on sergers, but one of my favorite ways to finish a neckline without a serger is to zigzag on some elastic. I don't stretch it at all.
You don't stretch it at all.
And then turn it under.
So you're using that for your recovery.
That's right.
Yeah, you don't want it to look gathered.
No, you don't want to overstretch it. And now turning things under, like you were describing with the fabric band, that gives you some hold.
That pulls it in just a little bit too, yes.
Because, your inner circle is smaller than the outer circle.
Right. But that elastic you're putting on is probably only a 1/4 inch or 3/8.
That's right, small elastic.
Biggest, right.
Maybe even clear elastic sometimes.
I would probably use clear elastic if it was just a shirt.
So if you have a serger, you can
now, if it's a swimming suit, I'm going to use the swimsuit cotton, elastic.
That's a really great thing to get, a swimsuit, you're like, man, I want this baby to stay up, know.
And you when it's wet, you want every edge finished with elastic.
Right.
Yes.
So you've got that finished with elastic. You could serge on the elastic and just gently around your neckline and then turn it and zigzag it or double needle it if you want.
When I'm at the pool or the beach or on the boat or the paddleboard and I see someone in a swimsuit and it's gotten wet and it's hanging on their neck or their back or something like that, I'm pretty sure it's an inexpensive suit that they did not put elastic,
everywhere.
And then that seemed right. It looks fine when it's dry.
Right.
But you get in trouble when it gets wet.
The other thing you can do, and this is great with a sewing machine too, I think, is like a knit binding.
Yes.
Kind of, where you have just like a strip of knit and I will gently stretch it around the
now she's stretching only the band,
right?
She's not. So when people say, oh, don't stretch your knits, well, we stretch them all the time in certain applications. So she's taking the band and giving it a slight tug sort of onto the neck, trying not to distort the neck.
And I will often do a little bit more of a stretch around the curviest part of the neckline.
And that's what you're supposed to do.
And that's what my mommy taught me to do. Okay, no. So I will do that. You can apply this with a zigzag or with a serger.
Now are you applying one layer, right, and folding over? What are you doing?
I've done both. I've done where I kind of like do a double layer and flip it up and top stitch it. Right. Or I've done one layer and then folded it over.
Then you can stitch on that fabric, or you can stitch outside of that fabric, or you can do a double needle and stitch one needle on the band and one off the band.
So the band can like kind of show. It can kind of flip up if you want it to. Or if you want to do, there's like this kind of binding technique. It's I think it's called like a French binding technique. And you see this on a lot of shirts. You do fold the binding in half. So you got 3 raw edges that you're like zigzagging together, right? And then you understitch.
Right.
So you understitch your seam allowances to the binding, and then you fold that under, and then you do one more line of top stitching. So on the outside of your garment.
And where are you top stitching?
You top stitch on the edge of your binding through your neckline.
Okay, that's what I was
So on the outside of your garment, you're going to have one line of top stitching.
Right. And it's going to be on the band.
Yeah, but well, no, you don't see the band. The band is hidden.
Okay. You turned it under, like a facing.
Under. Yes,
okay.
It's almost it's like a very small facing.
I was thinking of the different one.
Right.
Okay.
So then when you open that neckline and you look inside your shirt, you see 2 layers of stitching because you understitched that. Right. So what these all have in common is they are honoring the stretch factor, the stretch characteristic of knit fabrics. If you try and use a technique for a woven, you're going to wind up unhappy, I think. In the Easy Tea class, I recommend that's just a knit t-shirt, or excuse me, it's a woven t-shirt with like no shaping, barely, just on the side seams. It's the most basic woven shirt in the world.
Right.
I recommend just serging or overcasting the outside, turning it under, and straight stitching.
Now, what I will easily do on a knit is serge, do a 3-thread narrow, serge on the raw edge, turn it under, because I'm sort of using that almost as a guide to turn under. And I can top stitch that with some sort of stretch stitch on my sewing machine. Now, I'm going to say a tiny zigzag. And when I say a tiny zigzag, I don't mean one, a 1 on your length. I mean a 1 on your width.
Right.
And you're probably at a 2 or a 3 on your length.
Yeah, I would say like at least a 2.5.
And when you stitch that, it almost doesn't even look like a zigzag. So it just looks like sort of like a wavy straight stitch.
But let's back up.
Yeah.
Why doesn't that woven technique work? Why doesn't it on our knit neckline, if we serge it and we turn it over and we straight stitch it, and it ends up looking like wavy, and it ends up, not holding its shape, or it ends up popping.
Well, it's going to pop at some point is what's going to happen probably.
Because
you're stretching the fabric will stretch and the stitching will not.
A straight stitch does not
Right. It does not stretch.
So the stitches that we use on knits, they allow the fabric to stretch, they allow it to recover, and you will be more successful there. You can't just leave the neckline raw and then expect to be able to wear it many times.
Now, let me tell you about my raw finish that I've done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is to cut the raw neckline and then cut a raw strip, just one layer, right?
Yeah.
Lay it on my neckline and just use a double needle or a cover stitch and just stitch that on right in the middle of that. So I've got these raw edges. I've got 2 raw edges around my neck and 1 raw edge that is down on the shirt. Now, I don't know if that makes sense to anybody either. But that's that raw look.
Do you slightly stretch that little
Yes, I do.
strip?
Yes, I do.
So I just want to, get this across to you. You got to use something in there that's helping with that stretch. And not all knits will like everything the same. Some knits don't recover as well, right?
And some knits you might try a technique on and you're going, this is not going to work. Test. If you have, I had I think it was, a rayon and viscose with lycra, and I tried to put a band on it, and I didn't like it. It was too flimsy.
The fabric was too flimsy.
Yeah, it was just too flimsy. I just, it looked okay, I guess, but I did not get what I wanted to get. I just didn't feel it looked finished.
Did you end up cover stitching the neckline?
I think I actually wound up serging it. Yeah, serging the edge and then turning it under and cover stitching it.
I love to cover stitch.
Pretty sure that's what I did.
Those
and I
knits.
didn't put anything in it. I did not put elastic in it. It was my 3-thread narrow was enough to give it some body.
Yeah.
And that's another reason to do that. Not because you're finishing that edge, but if you have sort of a flimsy knit like that and you do that 3-thread narrow around there, it gives it some sort of body.
And that's not something I do. You do that more than me.
Yeah, it gives it a body, though, that I like to work with. And
you can feel it.
And I like how the fabric will turn.
Yes.
Because I stitch from the top and I can just turn it under, and I'm turning under that exact allowance that the stitch is in.
Right. So, when we say different knits will act differently, and then people might just like throw their hands up in the air and be like, oh gosh,
That's the way it is.
It's true. And the different garments will act differently. I was making a princess line knit dress with sort of a jewel neckline. So the neckline was actually quite, there was a lot of neckline there. It scooped way down. I don't have a lot of boobs, so I'm not showing any cleavage in this. It just looks, it's a neckline I really like. And I put that dress on before finishing the neckline, and it was stretching way out and showing my bra. And I was like, the garment was heavy. It wasn't a t-shirt. It was a dress.
The garment was pulling on
you. And it was a princess line dress, so it had these kind of the skirt in essence was gored, you know. So there was a lot of fabric hanging on it. So you know what? I kind of treated it like a swimsuit. I put 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch cotton swimwear elastic
in the neckline,
and it ended up
just had to beef it up. That's all.
It ended up laying nice and flat. It didn't look bulky, but it needed the strength because it had the weight pulling on it.
There were these knits in the 90s, like the late 90s, and I was doing a lot of costuming at that time in professional theater, and we called them growing knits.
Kept going and going.
They were really cool to make certain things out of, okay? But we could not hang them up. Because we'd come in and they were a different size or the neck hole was bigger, no matter what we did. And, I haven't seen any of those around, but they were real popular then.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to that. They were loosely woven and they would always be like really cool looking. And I remember making a lot of like 14th century, like princess long dresses, like, but they grew. You could not hang them up. We would sort of roll.
them.
We rolled them and kept them in a dishpan.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
We rolled them and kept here's the princess dishpan. But,
well, this is great because these different characteristics of knits and the garments. And we have just spent
I think we actually put a drawstring in a neck at one point because it started growing.
It just kept going.
Well, these were long dresses too, so there was the weight.
Yes.
That's what reminded me of it. It was the weight.
So we spent about 25 minutes talking about necklines, and that's because
that's everybody's most difficult.
And I think it's the one where when someone's new to knits, it's the weirdest one to get used to.
I still don't understand, if you have never done this, okay, why you don't make yourself a little mini neckline.
Oh, yeah.
And practice it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
Because it's you need to know how it's going to feel. You need to know what is the beef of it or not.
Right.
Is that technique going to work or not? Mm-hmm. Make yourself a little mini neckline.
And this is another reason why
you have scraps.
This is another reason why we were really adamant about you following the directions on the pattern before you get like the hang of getting wild and woolly and breaking the rules.
Right.
Because they've drafted that neckband to work with a certain type of
Because,
fabric.
you and I put two different kind of knits together all the time.
And we're sort of like, oh, I am familiar with this. And
Right.
it's totally understandable to not be familiar with that right away. Like,
right.
duh, that's okay. So it is a mystery before you get to work with a lot of different fabrics. So if you can follow the directions, it will help you, hopefully, to be as successful as possible.
So, do you think we should take a break
think
now
we
that
should
we've
take
made
a
their
break.
minds mush with all of this?
Yes, I think we should take a break.
Mallory, tell me all about your dream come true wardrobe planner.
I have been dreaming about creating a wardrobe planner for years.
Oh, no. Since you were like 8 and started drawing with crayons.
Yes, I love to sew and I love to write with paper products and pens and everything. And we have published a wardrobe planner. We have a couple of different options on our website. There is a universal wardrobe planner that you can purchase for $19.99 and print over and over again. It'll help you plan any project you wish. And then we also have themed wardrobe planners. And do you know what's special about those, Mom? What's special?
What?
They include some hand-drawn illustrations by yours truly for whatever we're doing in the Self Sewn Wardrobe group that month, like PJs or underwear or our month of planning.
Because we theme our months.
Yes, so you can tackle a new wardrobe section each month in order to build your perfect self-sewn wardrobe. So for more information about these, you can go to sewhere.com/planner and also check out the membership options because the Universal Wardrobe Planner is included with the backstitch and straight stitch and zigzag memberships. So go to sewhere.com/planner. Sewing out loud. All right, and we are back
with Mallory's favorite subject.
Oh, hemming.
Finishing hymns on knit garments.
I was going to talk about shoulder seams first.
Okay, well, let's do shoulders then.
Let's talk about when you are...
Shoulders won't take as long because I'm going to make a whole lot of fun of you when we get to hymns.
Well, real quick here. Shoulder seams on a T-shirt or something
Any
like
knit
that.
garment.
Any knit garment with a shoulder seam.
Talking about things that grow.
That's right. We love knits because they stretch around our bodies, right? They require less tailoring. You can do aerial yoga in them.
You can sleep in them.
Yes.
You can feel like you're wearing your jammies to the grocery store.
But we don't want our like entire front of our t-shirt to like end up, all the way on the floor or something like that.
Or what I think of too is when we make these waterfall cardigans, and people don't stabilize the shoulders and they just get longer and longer and longer. Right.
Really waterfall.
Right.
So when you're up there in those in those shoulder seams, you need to stabilize it with something.
Yep.
And you can almost use like
almost anything that you can sew through.
That's right. So if your pattern says clear elastic, yes. Or ribbon, yes. Or some twill tape, yes.
Or you can even use a scrap of woven fabric. I even like it cut on the bias.
Well, cut on the bias, right. I really recommend because it wouldn't fray.
Right. It doesn't fray, and you get a little bit of give like you would with your elastic.
So I think we can go through a few of these. I'm not a huge fan of clear elastic just because, like, I don't know why. I just don't like it as much in there.
I think because it's kind crunchy. Of go bad.
Yeah, it can go bad and get crunchy. It's okay.
I'm big on putting ribbon.
I like ribbon.
I like ribbon.
Now, for an active wear.
And the ribbon has to be in the stitching, everybody.
We'll talk about where to put it.
Yeah, if you're serging it, you can't like insert the ribbon under, the knitted loop of the loopers.
No.
It has to be stitched through.
It needs to be, the needle has to stitch through it.
Absolutely.
So if the ribbon looks like it's, not in the looper area but the needle's through it, and then the ribbon, like when I'm looking at my serger, my looper stitching is to the right, and then there's my needle, and my ribbon will go over to the left a little bit. It's okay as long as the needle's stitching through it, right?
Right.
So ribbon's nice and low profile. Cotton swimwear elastic is pretty thick.
It is. Sometimes it's too thick for some fabrics.
But sometimes
depends on
good.
fabric.
Sometimes it's good for like my rash guard.
Well, I think twill tape too. Sometimes twill tape's a little heavy for something.
In fact, I must say that's something that I have never used in a t-shirt. I just end up using ribbon.
I have used a lot of twill tape in costumes.
Yeah,
because it's hardy, so to
right.
speak.
It'll hold up to.
And I always have it out because that's how I tag costumes too. Mm-hmm. So it's always there.
So really anything, but so don't worry though. This is one place where we maybe would tell you to break the rules. If you got a t-shirt pattern at home and you don't have any clear elastic, you might be able to use ribbon.
Now, don't think you can cut a piece of stabilizer and stick it in there.
Yeah, it has to last forever.
Okay, it has to last forever. So any sort of or like an interfacing, like a non-woven interfacing or anything, it won't work.
Right.
I mean, it needs to have an integrity of its own by itself.
A durable good.
Right.
Now, I've never really used a strip of knit.
I haven't. Because
I want it to be stronger than that.
I've never used like a strip of the fabric. I don't think that's going to work.
I don't think it'll because really a shoulder seam. If I'm looking at Mom here and she's got on this t-shirt. Now it's a dolman. Let's pretend that it is not a dolman. And but that space from the edge of your neck to your shoulder,
you want it to remain the same length.
It doesn't need to change ever.
No.
Whereas maybe like the width of your t-shirt needs to change when you eat and bend and row a boat or whatever. So that's what we don't want to change. Okay, reinforcing that. You wouldn't want to reinforce the side seams of your shirt, right, Mom?
I can't think of when I've ever done that. I cannot think of an instance.
Unless it's some special pattern, because this is something that you brought up. A few times it's been mentioned, says, patterns for knits always have negative ease.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like they always have to stretch onto you. That's not particularly true.
It's not true at all.
No.
Most t-shirts don't have negative ease.
Yeah.
Because, here we go. It's a t-shirt because it's shaped like a T. Mm-hmm. Well, your body isn't.
Right.
So usually it's bigger than your body. Now, if it's a fitted garment, and you use elastic if you're using like ruching in the side or something like that, or you want to gather it, that might be an instance where you do that. Another place you might put elastic is if you're adding a skirt to a knit,
I wanted that to be its own section.
Right.
Yeah,
if your bodice is knit and your skirt is knit, or even if your skirt is woven, you need something there because the weight will pull
Well, let's move on to that, okay? Yeah. Let's just do that. So let's talk about adding on to a knit garment. I remember seeing all these t-shirt hacks, and I did a blog post about this, and they'll be like, just add this onto a t-shirt, just add this onto a t-shirt. And I see people, and they overstretch the t-shirt, or the t-shirt doesn't come back to its original shape after they've like gathered this skirt on. The knits react to weight in a different way than the wovens. They're not as stable. So if there's all those like skater dresses around, they don't have a gathered skirt, but a skirt nonetheless.
Well, I think some of them have some pleats.
But it's not like gathered, I guess.
Yeah, right. No, they're usually not gathered.
But then there are dresses that have a gathered.
They're usually like a half circle skirt or something like that.
Yes, and I love those, but I would definitely, when I'm stitching those pieces together, just stitch through some elastic.
Yeah, you have to have something there.
I wouldn't. Now, here's where you don't stitch through.
Well, the one thing is you don't want a wonky looking waistline.
Right.
You want it to be nice and straight.
Probably on this, theoretical dress here, hypothetical dress, you don't want to stitch through ribbon. You do want it to be something that stretches.
Yeah, that needs to be elastic around your waist.
So
if it's going around your body, let's make it stretchy.
Elastic is so wonderful in that it can both provide the stretch, but then also providing the recovery. So when we say stabilize, that's what we mean, allowing the knit to recover back to its original shape.
When we were talking about putting the ribbon or the stable, non-stretchy thing in the shoulder, we don't want it to stretch.
Right.
We're not looking for it to stretch.
Sort of like a neckline that's big enough to get your head through, right?
That's right.
It may not need to stretch.
Right.
So that's good. And then now you can make fun of me about hems.
So I don't remember exactly when I tried to teach Mallory about knits and shirts, but she was making her own T-shirts in high school.
Maybe you never taught me. That's why I don't know how to
No, I tried. You just would not cooperate. You were not receptive, I'm sure.
Okay.
So Mallory's always receptive enough to get it like as far as she wants to get it, and then she makes her own turn and does whatever she wants after that. So Mallory would make T-shirts, usually at the shop. This would happen when we had our shop. And she would sit there and she'd make, zip herself up a T-shirt and think she was like glorious and wonderful. And she would act like she was trying it on so she would know, like, where to hem it or whatever. And then she'd wear it. And then it would go in the laundry and she'd wear. This is when people say that their serging comes undone. You never. What did you ever do with those side seams?
That's right. I know that the 3TN works because I put a whole shirt together. Now, eventually, after wearing it several times. No, there's this one dress I had.
Well, did you ever do anything to those?
Do you remember
seams? Did you finish? I mean, did you knot off or anything?
No. So I made this dress to go to Baby Lock Tech. You'll remember this dress. I looked so super cute in it. It had a top, and then it was kind of like this geometric-y pink pattern. I made a maternity top out of that stuff, and then I made it a spaghetti strap dress. I'll show you pictures. Made a spaghetti strap dress. So this pink fabric was in the spaghetti straps, and it was around the neckline and everything. And then it was an ITY knit, the pink, and I made a skirt out of it to go onto this top. And it just looks so nice. And I made it the day we left for Baby Lock Tech.
And you didn't leave it in your car.
No, that's right. I took it to Baby Lock Tech. Yes, I took it. I made it.
One year she went with only the clothes she had on her back.
That's right. So I went to Baby Lock Tech in this dress, and I just didn't hem it. And I thought, I'll get to it. I will. But it looked so nice. The ITY, there's a knit where if you cut it straight across, it doesn't fray very quickly. I put that thing in the washing machine, in the dryer. I wore it out again. I had a baby. I wore it again. I didn't hem it. Finally.
I know which one you're talking about now. Yeah.
Maybe an inch of my 3TN sort of came unraveled. And you know what I did? Before I wore it out one night, came back over here, redid that little bit of the side seam, still didn't hem it, wore it out. Okay. And I should have just fray blocked it.
I know.
So when is it okay to not hem knits?
When you're Mallory.
Okay. You might be able to get away with it with some knits. And just cut your knit, rough it up,
Some of those really, really fine knits like that we've made T-shirts out of, we have purposely not hemmed them.
It's like if they're really tightly woven, knitted,
Except that I do like somehow finish off the end of my side seam.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
it's a good idea. Or you can just redo it.
I usually expect my clothing to stay like together when I wear it.
I'm just looking over there at those sergers. I think I got so excited because it wasn't fitting me because this was like after I had Zelda, and then I put it on and I was like, I look smoking hot. Like I wore like my nude heels and this was, I just looked so cute. I was so ready to be cute. And, wore it out and I was like, oh, well, it's coming apart a little bit. And I should have frame blocked it. But yeah, so if it's a real tightly knitted knit, you might be able to get away with not finishing that edge. And you know what? I think that the way I bound it was I did one raw edge of the binding to the raw edge of the neckline, flipped it over,
and then
top stitched and trimmed.
Yeah.
So there was unfinished. It was almost like a Hong Kong finish on the inside a little. That's not a Hong Kong finish, but there was.
Well, that's the technique, though.
Yes, but that's the technique. But I'm just saying in case somebody's like, a Hong Kong finish does not show on the outside. Yes, I know.
Well, no, I have made garments with the Hong Kong finish showing on the outside.
Let me just
when you have the seams on the outside.
Finish the thing, So I trimmed that, and it wasn't going to ravel on me, right? And you can do this with bias, as in a Hong Kong finish, because it will not ravel. No one saw that raw edge, but they saw the raw edge on my legs that were looking smoking hot, and it looked, it wasn't bulky; it was just cut. I've seen this in ruffles, sort of, and flounces.
Yes, and flounces with
on like bathing suits and stuff. They'll just leave it.
Leave it raw.
Some companies
those are cut on the bias too.
No, I'm talking about knits like that aren't finished.
But those flounces are cut on a bias.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But they're not cut on the bias so they don't fray.
No, but they are cut on the bias,
yes. You're right, because they're on a curve.
A flounce is always on a bias, yes.
Right. Now, so anyway, some of those companies will finish the raw edge of the knit by fusing something.
Or it feels like it has like glue on the back of it or rubber or something like that.
I don't have that.
Some sort of finish.
Mallory doesn't do that.
The Lululemons does that on their...
Oh my God, it is...
legs.
10:52 on March 29th, and Mom said Lululemon correctly. Okay? I just have to tell you guys that Mom's always like, what's that? Those Lululemon?
No, that's not what I say.
She'll get the Lularoe and the Lululemon, and
you can't really mix those up in real life, let me tell you.
Mom is being, somewhat disdainful. She's like, I just make my own leggings,
But if I ever learn there's a machine where you can do that, laser, I would, if I could laser cut a scallop, I will buy a laser to cut a scallop on my pants, and then however they back that with
or on underwear and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there are times when you don't have to hem and knit. Okay,
if you're Mallory.
If you do, there are lots of ways to do it. Hems don't often need to stretch.
Exactly. If you have like a big flouncy shirt, the shirt bottom, is 10 inches bigger than your hips, and it's or bigger than any part on your body ever. You could do a straight stitch. Now, it won't look as pretty.
It may not, depending on the
knit.
You
might not like how it looks, so you might be better off with that tiny, that 1 or 1.5 with zigzag.
This is where I think it's okay to use some kind of fusible tape that takes the stretch out of your knit.
That's true.
Oh, it would have been okay to do that in the shoulder seams too. We didn't say
and people do that in their neck too. I don't particularly like those either. Yeah,
I don't like it when it takes the stretch away.
Yeah.
When I need stretch.
Yeah. I know.
When people talk about doing that in a place where you need stretch, I'm like, how does it work?
There is a tape that leaves stretch.
Yes,
there is a tape that leaves stretch.
But sometimes I feel like they're talking about one that
You know why I don't like them? I have never not had them start to come off. After they're laundered so many times. Because I put my knits in the dryer. Even though it's low, I will start at, and I melt my glue.
I just beat my knits to hell in the dryer, and only an inch of my 3TN came out after 3 years. So you on your hem, if you want to stabilize that, or you can use a cover stitch or whatever, but once again, testing this, is important. We're not going to go into all the ways to hem a knit because there are so many.
A lot.
And I know that, that could be its own podcast, probably, just hemming knits. And this will go for the bottom of like a cuff or a sleeve. I'm like touching my bicep and
a pant.
Yeah.
Bottom of a pant.
Pant or something like that. If it doesn't require stretch, you can do something to make it more stable if you want.
Yeah. What I'm telling you, though, is that straight stitched is not as pretty in a knit.
No.
And I just think you're better off with a little bit of a zigzag.
I agree. Now, there are some real stable knits. And like that silk jersey cardigan.
Yeah.
Barely any stretch.
Right.
And it was put together with a 4-thread. And it was top stitched, and it looked fine. There's barely any stretch to that fabric, even though it was a knit.
Right.
Okay, so it's almost like it was a cross between
like you
woven
said,
and a
test,
knit. It depends.
Try it.
And then,
that's what those scraps are for. That's why
right.
you have extra fabric left over when you're cutting out your garment, because you're supposed to be testing. That's what those are for. Yes.
So there's no waste garments. They're just
I
not
just
giving
pick
you
them up and
test.
go put them by the machine.
Yep, good idea. Okay, well, I just want people to, honor their knit fabrics, think, how do I want this to stretch and recover? Ask questions, and we can help direct you.
I guess the other thing that if you use a stable stitch, on a knit, even if it is on that hem and it somehow gets stretched just in handling, sometimes the stitch won't pop, but your fabric will pull away from that stitch and you wind up with a hole.
So that's
that happens too.
Like honoring that fabric with a serger or a zigzag so that you can preserve it.
Right.
And we've talked about this before in the podcast, knits versus wovens, and how a lock stitch works with a woven.
Right.
A straight lock stitch works with a woven, and the zigzag and the serger stitches can work with knits because they mirror the structure of the fabric.
Yeah, and your 3-thread narrow is not going to work, everybody, on your woven.
Not to seam
that seems to just come up.
Yeah.
That comes up all the time.
I hope we made it clear in that podcast, because I
don't know how we couldn't make it clear, but maybe we didn't.
I have had a couple people like, I'm never changing from a 3TN again. And I was like, well, I guess if you never seam a woven on your it's just the other stitches are good too. It's not the only one. Okay. Well, I think that we have covered or maybe we just confuse people even more about finishing knits, but we wanted to get across it's different than wovens. And give you a few things to think about. And if you have any questions, you should go join the Facebook group over at facebook.com/groups/Self Sewn Wardrobe. Answer the questions, and we will approve you. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
So long and so happy.
Thanks for listening to Sewing Out Loud. For even more expert sewing advice, visit sewhere.com.